You can listen to Gaming's Lost Memories on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and wherever else you receive your podcast. Hello, everyone. This is BigReed with another episode of Gaming's Lost Memories. This is episode 30, and today we are going to be talking about Wind Waker. So a bit of a retrospective on Wind Waker with its recent relaunch on the Nintendo Switch 2 via the Nintendo Switch Online GameCube select titles they have on there. And yeah, I kind of wanted to cover a few things. So in a previous podcast, I already kind of covered the beginnings and I hate to say controversy at this point, but basically how Wind Waker was viewed and received at the time. So I want to do a bit of staging here. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Wind Waker development and how it was received at the time, because I think that adds a lot of context. Then we'll kind of highlight, how it's viewed now. And then I just recently completed a playthrough a couple of weeks ago. It was actually the first Nintendo Switch 2 game that I played. I was really wanting to play Wind Waker again, and that was my favorite way to do it. So talk about a little bit about that, and then the HD, remake, some of the differences there, and to actually go through the core of the game. So this will be in depth, but more so than most games, even in the Zelda series, which arguably at this point I think might be my favorite video game series. Final Fantasy might have had that title for a good chunk of time, but honestly, I enjoyed just about every single Zelda game. And the 3D Zeldas are all amazing in my opinion. But okay, so why was Wind Waker controversial? And I think it's important to note as well that Wind Waker now is a super cult hit and really popular amongst the fans looking back, even with some of the, I guess you could say, blemishes. I feel like a lot of Zelda games have a section, that might not be the best or that people don't like, or like a mechanic, because we just did Majora's Mask recently. And even that game, it has a mechanic that leaves some to be desired, and the Wii U HD remake corrected some of that. But why was Wind Waker hated? And it's really, it stabs me in the heart to say that, because spoiler alert, I love Wind Waker, and it makes me really miss the classic 3D Zelda games, the entries into the series. But I believe it was in 2000. Nintendo was showcasing the GameCube hardware, or what would become the GameCube, and they showed some Metroid. Mario 128 was around that time. I think it was the same show actually, and it was showcasing the jump in graphical and processing power. And you have to keep in mind, during this time, the leaps in console technology were pretty substantial. And if you look at just things historically now, the leaps in the console hardware are good, but they're not as life changing. Like going from Super Nintendo to the 64, you have 3D graphics now, and there's an entire 3D medium, which we've discussed before on this podcast as well, where it's kind of funny, but it was a problem that really wasn't solved before. So it's okay, let's take these 2D franchises and now we have to create a 3D element, and that's not really been done before. So you're kind of just tinkering with it as you go, and you can play it. You can say, hey, this is playing well in our test groups, but how is this going to be received? But even the 64 to the GameCube was a pretty substantial jump in technology. And then, after that, you have HD graphics, which any of those three leaps you could argue was the most important. But the reason why Wind Waker was, we're coming off of, which actually I think in 2000 Majora's Mask came out, but you're coming off of Ocarina of Time, arguably still the best game ever made, Majora's Mask, and now you're jumping into, it was either 2000 or 2001, and they showcase a realistic looking 3D Link fighting Ganondorf. It's 12 seconds long. They're just hitting the master, he's swinging the Master Sword around. Ganon taunts him. he throws his shield down, uses both hands with a master sword, and that's what people are going into with their expectations. You're expecting to see a really nice, realistic looking Legend of Zelda, and what came out was Wind Waker. Now, it's really crazy, and I feel like I've been gaslit by the game industry with this game in particular, because everybody's like, wow, the graphics are so beautiful. And like people say that in 2025, like the art style really stands out. It's gorgeous. It still looks amazing. And all of that is true, but it looked good at the time too. And everybody just hated it. And that was it was funny enough. That was one of the inspirations for the title of this podcast, Gaming's Lost Memories. Cause it's like, if you didn't live through it, or you don't go back and read all these old articles, and you weren't on the message boards, like you don't remember how hated Wind Waker was at the time. And it's such a shame, because it's a really good game, but it was also not well received by fans when they showcased it, because Link has a giant watermelon shaped head. It's completely cartoony. Meanwhile, already Nintendo's dealing with the GameCube following the recent trend in selling less consoles, from the NES to the Super Nintendo to the 64. Nintendo is losing third-party developers, losing the core game market, because, at the time, I think we were pretty much all teenagers during the 64. And you had like some of your older crowd too, but Nintendo wasn't seen as cool. It wasn't like it. They had such a, childish, this is for kids, like this is more of a toy than a gaming console, and if you want to be cool, you got to get a PlayStation 2 or an Xbox. And so Nintendo's dealing with that. They're dealing with Microsoft coming in with utilizing their Microsoft and Windows money to lose $4 billion to push the Xbox into the marketplace. And you could argue if that was successful or not. They lost $4 billion during that time. So most companies would say, hey, that was really not successful. But then, from Microsoft's standpoint, they did exactly what they set out to do. We are going to lose money on hardware, and we are going to push out and gain a foothold in the consoles. And what's important here, and the context is absolutely massive for this game as well, PlayStation 2 sold 160 million units and just devastated the other two console manufacturers. The Xbox, I think, sold like 24 million roughly, and the GameCube came in third place. So this was like, they went from first to last place in this console generation. During this time, they're dealing with the stigma that Nintendo games and Nintendo consoles are for kids. Then they showcase a game that was pretty far along in development. Like, you can't change the entire art style and gameplay mechanics of this game at this point. And, Link's got this giant, like I said, watermelon head. Everything's a cartoon. And it's just, oh, man, it was tough. It was kind of funny that with the pre-orders, there was a couple things they bundled in. And I can't remember what the actual pre-order was. But I think it was, if you pre-ordered the game, which is insane. Talk about pre-order bonuses. The Nintendo during this time, there was two different things that came out in various aspects, and I can't remember which one was the pre-order, but you got Ocarina of Time on a disc with Master Quest, which was like a reworking of the game, and it was a lot harder. So it was like a harder version with different puzzles. All the dungeons are different on one disc for the pre-order before the game came out, which is absolutely awesome. And I'm 99% sure that was the pre-order. They also had a collection up until that point. So it was Zelda 1, I think Zelda 2, and then Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time all on a GameCube disc. But I'm pretty sure you got Ocarina of Time and Master Quest as a pre-order bonus, which is bonkers. So it already seemed like they were trying to bridge the gap and get people to pre-order it. I was one of them, and sadly I didn't have enough money to pay for my pre-order. You could put $5 down and get that Ocarina of Time GameCube disc, but when it came out, I didn't have enough money to buy it, so I had to wait a little bit before I got it. I think I got it used too. Yep, I still have my original copy. Just had to check behind me here. So the culmination of the game, I don't want to dive too much into it because we did a deep dive before, but That's what's leading into it. Now, when that happens, the GameCube's not selling well. And notoriously during this time, I think it launched at I think at 249. By the end of it, it was $99 retail, and I'm pretty sure you could pick up a GameCube with like discounts for like $69. Like they were just like trying to get these into people's hands. Two games which we've talked about recently as well that were impacted by this, Mario and Zelda. So Super Mario Sunshine, was meeting a development crunch, and so was Zelda. So heading into this, you're kind of already experiencing a lot of, I would say, I don't like saying hate, but there was just turmoil with this game. So the people that bought it were Zelda fans, were Nintendo fans, but obviously it didn't sell how Nintendo wanted it to sell because they weren't moving GameCube units. So this is just like a weird time, and I think that's what led to a few of the decisions of Wind Waker. But what's interesting about Wind Waker is it actually set the tone for Breath of the Wild by a lot. Like there's a lot of similarities and a lot of things that kind of happened first in Wind Waker that led to, Breath of the Wild, which was really cool. So there's also something to break down too of like what types of Zelda games are there. And me, I kind of break them down into three categories. You have your 2D games, which are awesome. For me, I fully believe that you can make a brand new 2D Zelda game as like a side game, and it would be awesome. They just remade Link's Awakening recently. A plus, love the game, would love to see more of that. Then you have your classic 3D Zelda games. That would be, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, and you could probably throw Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword in there. Skyward Sword I'm going to kind of leave out because that's like a whole other game I need to do a deep dive on because I have very strong feelings. It's the only Zelda game I just don't like. But you have your classic 3D Zelda games, and then you have your modern 3D Zelda games, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdoms. The reason I break them up into those three is I feel like they're extremely different from each other. And one of the reasons why I could appreciate Breath of the Wild and like it, it was missing a lot of the things that made Zelda Zelda. And I can understand why, like they're doing different gameplay mechanics, it's open world, all that good stuff. But it is both those two, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, those are significantly different than the classic 3D Zelda games. But the core three, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and Wind Waker, are very similar with their structure, with how you play the game, how you progress, and everything like that. And those just feel really good. So, Wind Waker, I was very curious because I haven't played it. Jeez. I might have played it. I think I played the Wii U HD version, but I didn't play the Wii U a lot. Like by the time I wanted to play on the gamepad and I couldn't, and I think that was just kind of it. So I really wanted to go back and revisit this title because I was very curious. Like, how did I still feel? I remember liking it at the time. Like I really liked it. Like, and there will be spoilers. So going forward, I will let you know when there's going to be a spoiler because I do want to cover the game pretty in depth here. So before I go into it, I'll give it like a 5-second pause before I continue. But from beginning, middle to end, I absolutely love the game, and there is something there where I miss the classic 3D style of Zelda gameplay. It's very reminiscent of the 2D style of gameplay. Like A Link to the Past is a great example. You go into a room, and I remember I played it. My second playthrough was the Game Boy Advance version of it, and one of the later dungeons, this just sticks in my head, is like you go into a room and you're like, oh, I can't progress, and there's like no hints, but then you start pushing blocks around. There's like 20 blocks on screen, like, and you just start pushing them in each direction, and one of them will move eventually. Or you have to light a torch, very simplified, and then you generally get an item, and that item helps you conquer that dungeon, and then of course the classic boss fight at the end. That structure is great. Going into a Zelda dungeon just feels awesome. Like it is, and that was what was missing from Breath of the Wild, which is why I kind of section off, Wind Waker and those classic 3D Zeldas. So coming back to Wind Waker, the first thing I want to say is I think it runs phenomenal on the Switch 2. The only dip in quality that I saw is the ending movie didn't appear to be like upscaled or converted properly. Now, the game itself is fine. Like the game looks smooth, runs smooth. I didn't have any issues. It looks exactly like I remember. But the one thing that I will say is that ending movie, little cinematic clip, it looks like that wasn't updated. You can also do save states in the Switch 2 version, which save states are awesome. I didn't realize how much I would like them, and they're simple. I don't need anything complex, but being able to, have a busy life, and, I played it fully portable, but being able to be in a dungeon room, walk in, and because before, if you would save your game in the 64 versions, when you save, you and start the game back up, fire back up. If you're in a dungeon, it exits you out of the dungeon. I believe it saves all your progress. Maybe not Majora's Mask, but in Ocarina of Time it did. But then, like, once you turn it back on, you're in the water temple from the very beginning. So with the save states and being able to put your Switch 2 in sleep mode, it's very beneficial to any of these classic games. I think it's awesome. Like, you can, go into a boss fight and save state before, and if you die or something, you can reload that save state. So that's another positive benefit. But first impressions of the game, what if it looks amazing? I love the cell shaded art style. The art style added a lot of lighting elements, and it's a lot brighter in the Wii U version. So they do look different to me. But looking at the classic style is absolutely great. You kind of follow Link from the beginning. So, he's just kind of a lazy small island boy. You're living with your sister and your grandmother. Your sister comes and wakes you up, and she's like, "Hey, for your birthday, you can borrow my, telescope or whatever that thing's called." So, the thing that pirates use to, look through and see what's out there. So she gives you that, and as you're looking around, you see a gigantic, awesome-looking bird who ends up being a major boss fight, which was just great. But that bird, I love the design. Just gigantic wings, huge beak. It's wearing like a mask that with a cool design on it. Like it's just you see it fly by, clutching, a character, and you're like, hey, that looks awesome. I wanna fight that bird. There's a pirate ship chasing it. It eventually gets hit with a cannonball and drops that character. And keep in mind, there's gonna be spoilers here, but the end I will also mention when there will be spoilers because it's pretty huge if you haven't played it. But this does follow the Hero of Time timeline, I believe. I think it ends with Twilight Princess. I don't know how they bridge it with Skyward Sword because I don't like playing it. But okay, so now you need a sword to basically go find where this bird dropped this girl, right? So you go, you find a guy who has a sword. He starts training you. It's cool. You're battling him, learning how to dodge. The actual fighting, I like a lot. I understand why there is like a hard mode, hero mode or whatever in the remake because it's really funny when like you get hit by something and it does 1/4 of one heart container of damage, and I'm playing Tears of the Kingdom at the same time, and meanwhile something hits you and does like 11 hearts of damage, and you're just like, oh my god, I need more defense. But you get a sword, awesome. You need a shield. You go talk to your grandma. She's worried sick about you. She's like, oh my gosh, how could this possibly be? It's dangerous out there. You're also gifted a green tunic for your birthday, which is just awesome because it keeps playing into this, Hero of Time thing because the end of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask creates kind of like a time gap. I think they've ended it officially, but doing those different timelines kind of just messed everything up. So I understand with Breath of the Wild, Nintendo being like, okay, we just need to pretend some of this stuff didn't happen and we'll just start fresh. But yeah, you immediately. One of the cool things about the gameplay with the battling is enemies will choreograph a move, and when they do, your A button, it makes a sound. It's like, whoop, and if you hit that, you do like a dodge and an attack. So you can kind of, it's not really a parry, I guess, because you're not like deflecting their blow, but it's a dodge and a hit. Very cool. So eventually, your sister gets kidnapped, and Link. Listen, Link is not physically imposing. He doesn't have the strength of the Triforce, but he's always like courageous, and he's like, "I'm gonna get my sister back." So it opens up the gameplay very briefly here because the game clearly wants you to kind of like steer in a specific direction. But you have, I think it's 64 total map tiles. So you have a map, it's all ocean, and there's, I think it's 8 by 8 roughly. So if I'm wrong, that's okay. But you have 8 tiles, and you can go to each tile. You can throw some fish food out, and there's like this special looking fish, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to tell you about what's on this island, what you need to do," or he'll give you some like tips, and he'll fill out your map. Okay, so the game is open world, but it's a unique take on it, and this is kind of where we're gonna jump into one of the most uh, it splits the fan base a little bit was the sailing. So you control the wind. That's what you find the little baton, the Wind Waker, and you control the wind. You can change the direction by playing a song that the wind blows in, and that's important because you can go north, south, east, or west, right? So you change the direction of the wind to push your sail. So the game is massive. There's a ton of islands. A lot of like side exploration. Now the downside is you can swim, but you'll drown if you swim too long. So the game is designed to be in your boat or sailing to an island to get out on the island to do something. A very cool mechanic, but sailing can take a little while. Now my retrospective on coming back to it and playing it, in the modern day, is that's honestly not really an issue. I never ran into any sailing issues or anything like that. The game eventually allows you, eventually allows you to fast travel as well. So the beginning of the game, you're kind of trying to figure out where your sister is, and that leads you to, I think it's, you either start on Outset Island. There's another island that has like a bunch of like side quests and NPCs and characters, and you come back to it a few times. The music is just so unbelievably charming. Like they did such a good job of in Zelda games with music. They're always really good at inducing emotion. So the music, just in general, just feels great, and you can kind of tell it adds to the atmosphere of being on those islands and being in that experience. But you go with the pirate ship, and you're heading to the Forsaken Fortress. So you come back here a couple of times. Now the game starts off, I will say, kind of like a little slow, but maybe because I know what to experience, or excuse me, I know what the experience is going to be, and I know what to expect. But it's also hilarious. Link's facial expressions, like this is a fun thing to Google. Just Google Wind Waker Link facial expressions, and like he just makes so many hilarious faces. But to get into the Forsaken Fortress, which is where your sister is at, you're trying to figure out trying to locate her, but also trying to understand like what is this fortress? Why are there moblins everywhere? Like who is in charge here, right? So to sneak you in, they load you into a barrel and just like blast you, like they just catapult you towards the Forsaken Fortress. Link smashes his face, lands, loses his sword. So it's like, great, now you got to find your sword. I understand trying to break up the gameplay, but I look at a game like Ocarina of Time, and that is like if vanilla was the regular flavor, some of the other games try to change up the gameplay, and they're like, oh, but do you like vanilla with maybe some sprinkles, or do you like chocolate? And it's like, well, chocolate's good too, but vanilla's a classic. Soft serve vanilla ice cream, everybody loves it. Like Ocarina of Time, down to its nuts and bolts, is basically a 3D version of A Link to the Past. It's straight gameplay, no fluff, no messing with stuff. You are what you are. It's just great. The reason I say all of that is you don't have your sword now, so now you got to sneak around. So in the Forsaken Fortress, there's moblins, the little goblin guys, basically everyone you would expect to be on Ganon's force, from like the original NES. You're like, hey, what are all these guys doing here? But the whole idea is you're trying to sneak up to the tower and find your sister. Now, to do so, you're sneaking around. The gameplay gets a little different. So you can't get seen. If you get found by like the big moblin guys, like the big pig guys, they hit you and throw you in jail. And then you have to start escaping again through the jail, which is like in the middle point of the fortress. But you're sneaking around, and they have these giant spotlights, and you have to fight an enemy there to knock out the spotlight. So eventually, as you're climbing up, you can sneak across. Because if they get you in the spotlight, the second time I was there, I didn't get caught the first time. I did it like perfectly. But the second time I was there, they shoot like bombs at you and knock you off, and you basically have to start again. The other thing you're doing is you're hiding in barrels and sneaking around. And if the moblins find you, you move around a little bit, and you'll get like a hit of music, like, boom, and they look at you. You have to hurry up and stop. If you don't stop, they light your barrel on fire and throw you in jail. Like it's immediate. Like, oh, you're done. Get back out of here. You got caught. And I feel like during this era too, stealth-based gameplay was in a lot of games. Obviously, you had the success and awkwardness of Metal Gear Solid 2, but like the stealth-based gameplay, it just seemed to be in a lot of games during this time, this era, especially like into the next generation too. It's like, okay, hide. Okay, well sometimes hiding isn't fun. I want to swing my sword, right? You get through here. I believe, if I recall correctly, you locate your sister, but you have to get out of there. I can't remember how you exit the Forsaken Fortress the first time. Regardless, that leads you to, I think it's Windfall Island is the main island I was referencing earlier. I think Outset Island's the islands you start on. But it leads you to your first temple and your first area. And already up until this point, I'm enjoying the game. But this is where, like Chef's Kiss, you just get classic phenomenal Zelda-based dungeon gameplay. You go and meet the Rito. So this is the first thing to kind of remember with the Rito. This is where the Rito originated. So this is one of the first things about the first things that kind of lead to Breath of the Wild and some of the style. So not only do you have the art style, which when I look at Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, it's very clearly like a cel-shaded, more cartoony art style. But the characters just, they don't look like cartoons, where Wind Waker, Link has a gigantic head. It's a very unique style. I don't regret it. But you can see the cel-shaded kind of came back for Breath of the Wild. So the second thing is the Rito. Now, in Wind Waker, for any of the Hyrule history buffs out there, I might not be perfect here. I'm going off of my recent playthrough and what I remember. So there is a Zora ancestor, but it appears that the Rito replaced the Zora. There are technically Gorons in the game. Technically. Very, very, very technically. But the, Kokoriko, or whatever those people are called, the forest kids from Ocarina of Time, they have also changed as well. But so you get this first experience with this bird-like, people. So it's like, you would think with Hyrule being completely flooded by oceans that the Zora would have made more sense. I honestly don't know, and this would have made one heck of a crazy, water temple. But for whatever reason, they're birds. Once again, a unique cartoony. They have a mouth where they have like a giant beak nose. Okay, so you get to this island, and the entire time you just hear this like growing like, and So atmospherically, you're already like, whoa. Like, I'm looking around this big, beautiful ocean, all this blue. I'm on this sunny island. There's some giant red dragon up there pounding and going crazy, and he speaks the ancient tongue. So any of like the god monsters, they speak, Hylian or whatever was forgotten. Hyrule's basically forgotten. Like everything is flooded. Nobody remembers his stuff. I remember at the time that I played it, the timeline it was 100 years later, which is obviously not long enough for fish to become birds and all of this to like really change that much. So it would make more sense if it was like 1,000 years or hundreds of years and whatever. I mean, still probably through evolution. I guess that's not enough time, but it didn't seem like enough time for those changes to happen. But okay, you get this island. Bird people are like, "Hey, we'd love to help you, but everything's kind of going crazy." Valu, our dragon guy who gives everyone a scale or a feather or whatever that allows them to fly, he's going nuts. The chief's son, he's being a big crybaby. He's like, "I'm not giving you this pearl. We got to collect some pearls, right? We got 3 pearls to collect to, progress this storyline here." Very similar to Ocarina of Time. So you can kind of see where they're like, okay, we're going to borrow from that. Yeah, you're a kid, you got to collect 3 gems to do something, right? So you get a grappling hook, which I absolutely love. So you have the grappling hook. You also get the boomerang. You also get the hook shot. And all 3 of them kind of serve a different purpose. The grappling hook's kind of cool because you can like stun enemies with it. If they have like a unique item that you need on it, it'll pull that item from it. But the main purpose here is you can use it to climb and to swing and close gaps. So that's kind of how, before the Rito fly, they use this grappling hook to, do all this. But anyway, you go, it's essentially like a fire temple. And this is where the game really starts to shine for me. Soon as I got into this area, I was just like, now the dungeons, I will say, across the board, I don't want to say they're simple. They're not hard, but they feel very satisfying. So you're climbing around in here, and during the demo, when they released the demo of this game, this was the boss fight that they gave you. So the gameplay is great from this point. You're solving, you're utilizing different puzzle mechanics. You're throwing water jars on top of lava to create a platform that shoots up into the air. You're grappling around. There's the boss key. It's a really good feeling. Like it feels like classic Zelda gameplay. You're right at home. Each room that you complete, you get that feeling of satisfaction when you complete a Zelda dungeon. That like it's one of those things in the gaming industry that it's like Mario jumping on a Goomba. That's satisfying. Being inside of a Zelda dungeon and solving puzzles, it's just satisfying. It's like you can't wait to get to the next dungeon. As you complete this dungeon, though, you go into the big boss room and you find out what's happening with the red dragon and why he's going crazy and why everything's out of cahoots right now. Everything's kind of out of control. There is this giant armored centipede monster that is like biting and pulling on his tail or something like that. And this is where the game, like this boss fight, is just phenomenal. Gorgeous. Oh my gosh. This is one of the best looking rooms. And I think that's why they used it, honestly, for the demo, is because it's such a satisfying boss fight that, I think it's basically Goma. But, you have your giant centipede monster. It's in the lava, hitting you, smashing at you. And what you got to do is use that grappling hook, hit its eye, stun it, and then, keep hitting it. After that happens, you use your grappling hook to hook onto the dragon's tail, swing across. It drops the platform off and actually smashes the armor off of the centipede. Then you just fight the centipede itself. You get a heart piece at the end. Link does his little victory cheer. That was one of my favorite things. Like after you beat a boss, he's like jumping up and down with both arms and feet, holding a sword, just like so pumped up. You get the pearl, right? Then you got to move on to the next section. And we're going to skip past it a little bit because I want to kind of talk about it high level, but already, so you go back, your ship talks to you. I think I forgot to mention this. The King of the Red Lions, he's like, "Hey, I got a giant, moving head. We got to move on to the next section. Let me mark your map." You go to the second dungeon, right? And so we need 3 pearls. We're going to get the second pearl. And you're looking at, what would be like a forest temple. you already got the bangers, right? We're doing a forest temple now. The Cocorico people, they have turned into little wooden creatures that wear a leaf with like funny facial expressions cut into it, and they waddle and they make this cute little jingle when they walk. They're actually adorable. You talk to the new Deku tree, which looks like he's 4 beers deep on a Friday night after work. But I think he's supposed to be the baby Deku tree from Ocarina of Time. I believe through the timeline that's who he's supposed to be. Like he grew into that giant tree. So the item that you get here is a giant leaf that does two things, and this is going to be another throwback to Breath of the Wild. So if you hold the leaf and hit it, it shoots a giant gust of wind out. You can use your magic power to jump off of a cliff or a ledge and pull it out, and you actually use it as a glider. This is where it's kind of critical through several points to ensure the wind's behind you, because it'll like push you pretty fast in that direction. And that's the item that you use to get into the forest haven itself. But what's cool here is that that's the birth of the paraglider. So this is the first game where you're kind of flying around dungeons and crossing giant gaps across the ocean and all that stuff. This was the birth of the paraglider. So we already have like three things that kind of were utilized with the foundation of Breath of the Wild, which I think kind of tells you how Nintendo felt about this game. Because I'm thinking back to Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. Skyward Sword had the stamina wheel, but I'm trying to think back to Twilight Princess, and while that is its own unique game, I can't really remember too many different things that were pulled. Like these are key different. Like you have the Rito, you have the graphical style, you have a major gameplay mechanic, and I think Nintendo kind of knew Wind Waker was good, and they're like, oh my gosh, we have to deal with all these people complaining, and like this is a good game. But you go into this temple, another great temple. Get to another cool boss fight that reminds you of another Ocarina of Time boss. Now, this is where... So we're collecting 3 pearls, right? This is where you can kind of see where Nintendo had to possibly make some cuts. There are several more dungeons, but allegedly, during the development of Wind Waker, there were several gameplay mechanics, items, and things cut. Now, this is all alleged. I think Shiggy at some point said there were supposed to be 2 more formal dungeons that were cut from the game and were later used in, I think, Twilight Princess. One of them was the Ice Palace, actually, that little ice mansion in Twilight Princess. I think that idea was supposed to be in Wind Waker. And then there was another one. And keep in mind, like I told you, you can't really swim in the ocean, so there's a lot of like dead space on the map, kind of. One of the other mechanics was there were supposed to, allegedly, there were water boots similar to iron boots, that would allow you to like, travel through the water. So that one might have been scrapped entirely. But early on in some of the early artwork and concept work, there was a character with a giant fishhook that was supposed to lower Link down into Hyrule proper, under the ocean. And apparently he was supposed to be like all throughout the map. That was cut entirely. So I think to me it feels like a complete game. But you can tell that Nintendo had grander visions, and probably what had to happen is they had to have the tough discussion of like, we got to get software out here because we, once again, don't have great third-party support. People aren't buying the console, and all of the games are going to PS2 and Xbox, but like, so we need to get our heavy hitters out there. Like, we need to carry the system. And I feel like there's a lot of experimentation during the GameCube era. It's kind of funny because like one of the other GameCube games that came out was the Super Mario Strikers, the soccer game, which I had. Oh man, do I still have it? Oh no, I don't think I have my copy of it still. So that was one of the ones. There's Mario Tennis. That was one of the ones that got sacrificed. Nope, I lied. There it is, Super Mario Strikers. Very fun, arcade style game. But I think Nintendo was being experimental and trying to have constant software, where they needed their heavy hitters out to sell consoles, and Wind Waker was one of them. So you're already trying to like streamline the development of it and get this game out quicker. And honestly, if the game was supposed to be, twice as large, it's really hard to get that. They probably need another couple years of development time. I imagine there was also probably some internal dialogue because of the initial player feedback. They're probably like, whoa, like what's going on here? But you go to get your third pearl, you can't. It's on, I think it's Outset Island, and it's like behind the island. So you go behind there. You are getting sucked into a whirlpool. You got to use bombs too. So bombs act as they normally would, in 3D Zeldas. But the other cool thing is you can also attach it to your ship to shoot cannonballs, basically exploding cannonballs. The grappling hook is also used. Everything was kind of multi-purpose. Like they really did think this out. But not only was it like a very practical weapon that you would use, it also allowed you to attach it to your ship, and it would do like a drop claw machine thing, and grab whatever treasure was underneath you. There's lots of treasure maps. We're gonna be talking about that here shortly. But eventually, you're talking to this gigantic Jabu Jabu looking fish, and he speaks Hylian, so you can't understand what he's saying. But for some reason, your boat can speak this, and he's like, "Hey, here's this pearl. Great, so you got the 3 pearls. So now you gotta sail around and put these 3 pearls in these 3 statues." Now, on my way to these places, I was already stopping and getting my map kind of fleshed out. So I think found 2 of them already, like on the way there, or one of them. So I only had to drop 2 more pearls off. So I think if you're doing this and not just going straight to the next marker on the map, you're eliminating some of the full feeling of the open worldness later on. You drop all these off. They make a Triforce looking beam that attaches between them, and it summons the Tower of the Gods. So this is another pretty cool. You're inside, but you're also utilizing your ship to lower and raise water levels and everything like that, and complete. You get the bow in here, but to complete this area, so it's like another full dungeon. Also enjoyable as well. I actually kind of like forgot about that, because it's like, okay, you have 2. You get the Forsaken Fortress, which is kind of like a dungeon or area that you solve. You got 2 of the early dungeons, 2 of the later dungeons, then you have the Tower of the Gods, right? Now, Tower of the Gods is a trial, right? So you get your bow and arrow, you get through this, you learn another song, and this song allows you to take control of either a statue and you can walk it around, or later in the game, a person. So you utilize this new mechanic to not only control yourself, but control, different statues to help solve puzzles and everything in this. And you fight a bongo like boss out of this one. Once again, I think Nintendo, I really wonder if internally they were like, we knew Wind Waker could be a really special game, because it harbingered back to Ocarina of Time a lot. And this was another one. So you fight this boss. You got to shoot his eyeballs on his hands. You got to shoot his hands, or they are really annoying and like knock you off into spikes. And then you shoot his eyes, and he opens his mouth. You throw a bomb in. I love fighting bosses like this that have mechanics. It's one of those things, you do that 3 times, and then boom, he's done. He's like, okay, you're good to go, right? So after this, I believe you go down to Hyrule after. Now, once again, keep me honest here. I just replayed it, but it's been a couple of weeks. But eventually, you open up a portal where you kind of sail into it, and you're down in Hyrule proper. So you're down in, it might be the Temple of Time, I think. And this is where you learn. Spoiler alert. We're going to start spoilers here. That Tetra, who is the female pirate captain that you've been with, is actually Princess Zelda. She's a reincarnation of Princess Zelda, right? You are allegedly a reincarnation of the hero of time, or a separate hero, but you're in that lineage of Lynx who, leverage their courage to save the day. She is the backbone of wisdom, and she inherited basically the Triforce of Wisdom through that. And you learn that your boat is speaking through you, and he's actually the king of Hyrule. So you get to meet him. What's so cool here, though, is I believe this is when you get the Master Sword. It's not powered up, though. Through time and being locked and frozen. But whatever the goddesses did, Ganon took over Hyrule. So allegedly, this is also alleged. It's probably completely confirmed, but I think honestly, I believe some of the fan theories out here at this point. I think Nintendo was just making games and tried to tie it back in, but like things kind of weren't lining up. So it is what it is. You just take it with a grain of salt. But after Ocarina of Time, Child Link, he's given his youth back, but has all these memories, and he leaves, goes through the Lost Woods, and he goes and does the Majora's Mask stuff. With the Majora's Mask stuff, there's a timeline where he never returns. And that's where Ganon, comes back. He breaks out of wherever he was sealed. He comes back, and there's no hero to stop him. He destroys Hyrule, and basically the goddesses are like, the only way to contain his power is Hyrule's gone. It's cursed, boom, and they just rain. Rains, and they just flood Hyrule with oceans. Now, when you go into Hyrule, which once again, this is allegedly another part of the game that was significantly shortened. Apparently, there was supposed to be a lot of underground Hyrule proper exploration, which is such a shame because what we get is really creepy and cool. There's all these enemies. There's like 50 enemies in this thing, and big enemies too, like the moblins, the giant iron knuckles, which are so awesome in this game. They're I can't think of what those Egyptian cat god looking things were, but anyway, they're in this iron knuckle armor with a giant sword, and you have to get behind them and knock their armor off of them. It's like tied around the back. You can cut that and then knock their helmet off of them so you can actually do damage to them. If you don't do that, you can't actually hurt them, and they hit you for like a ton of damage. And there's different versions of the iron knuckles. Eventually there's like ones with better armor and higher attack and everything like that. But they're all frozen in the Temple of Time. And you have to like solve this puzzle. You get down in there, get the Master Sword. The King of Hyrule is like, this is everything that's happening. We got to stop Ganon. So you have this now, right? When you pull the Master Sword out, it unfreezes time. Time has been frozen in Hyrule in the Temple of Time down there. I wish you could go a little bit further. I wish there was more to explore because it does seem really cool. But now you get back out there and you got to fight like 50 hard enemies. You got to clear out this entire room. But it's kind of fun because now you have like a better attacking sword. Like you feel a lot more capable as a player. And this leads to you need to get the Master Sword back to the ability to, seal Ganondorf and seal away evil. You go back to the Forsaken Fortress, which you find out is basically Ganon's hideout, and it's Ganondorf, I should say. He's not the giant pig monster. It's Ganondorf, and he looks really cool. He's got giant robes, 2 big swords. He's got a sweet beard. Like he just looks cool. This part's really fun because after you kind of get up there, you fight the bird, you rescue your sister. From what I believe, she goes back with the pirates. She loves them. They're actually like nice characters, but Ganondorf is significantly powerful in this game. Like you barely stop him, but at this point you're holding the sword and he just like punches you and he's like, you're a chump. That sword does not have the power to seal me away. Bop. But what's really cool here is the red dragon he comes back to save the day, and he looks at Ganon. They get you out of there, and Ganondorf's just staring at him, and he just blows this gigantic fire dragon attack into him to burn Ganondorf. Like, this is where it's like, oh, it's a cartoony game, but there's like some sweet parts in it. That was one of my favorite. Ganondorf's just like staring him down, and then all of a sudden all of these flames just like blow into him, and you just like, they basically burn the Forsaken Fortress down. I think they also show Phantom Ganon here. once again, fighting Ganondorf and Phantom Ganon in Ocarina of Time, very similar. Hit the ball to him, go over there, hit him with the sword. You hit that ball back to him and it like shocks him. So they're just they're kind of telling you Majora's Mask was a fun side game. We did that because we needed another Zelda game, and we have all these assets. So like, how quickly can we develop a new style game? But you see, Wind Waker was supposed to be a sequel to Ocarina of Time, and I think even with some of the cut mechanics, I think they really wanted this to be, feel like Ocarina of Time on a new console with a different, art style and everything like that, which sadly kind of doomed the game from its initial reception. It's a highly reviewed game at the time, but it definitely did not get the props it deserved. Like, it could have easily won Game of the Year, in my opinion. I can't remember what games, like, there's probably a ton of other games that came out, and I think for some of them it did win Game of the Year, but I don't think it got the appreciation that it deserved at the time. Powering up the Master Sword, this is where, from the story standpoint, you get some other pretty cool elements. So the main Rito character and the little Lost Woods guy, little, I can't remember what this is called, Koguriko. If I'm saying that wrong, I apologize. But you find out that both of them are ancestors to the original sage, in Ocarina of Time, once again, another heading back to this, it was all about awakening the sages, utilizing their power to, and the Master Sword to seal away Ganon again. And they're both ancestors of the sages. So all of these characters that you're interacting with and, playing with, outside of, I think, Ganon, he's just Ganon, they're all, the modern versions of them. So they're the ancestors of them. Now, in these temples, you have your wind and earth temple. I was going to say forest, but they're not forest. It's wind and earth. The earth temple, interestingly enough, is with the Ridu character. I love the earth temple. This was my favorite temple in the game, and I remember playing through this one. I did this one first. I don't know if you could do them out of order or not. I did this one first, so I don't know if you need to, or if you can do them in any order. But you get the mirror shield here, and the gameplay and puzzle solving was just, phenomenal. Another great creepy boss that I actually forgot till I watched a video of. I was watching all the different Zelda bosses, and it was just like a compilation of all the bosses of Wind Waker, and I was like, oh, I forgot about this one. But the gameplay and the mechanics of this were just awesome. And where the first two temples in the game and the Tower of the Gods, they felt like they were easier, shorter. This one, you get a full meaty temple. You're once again, harboring back from utilizing the mirror shield to solve puzzles, using that song with the Wind Waker to control the other character who can fly. So, but it never feels annoying. I during this playthrough, I never once lost control of these characters or couldn't control them or the enemies kidnapped them or anything like that. It all worked exactly. It was like very seamless. Like, you didn't really have to like baby these characters, where sometimes, you're playing a section and that character you're in control of gets caught by enemies and you get a game over. And those I guess you would call them companion missions. I think the escort missions. There we go. Escort missions were also popular during this time, and everybody hated them. Wind Waker had them. Resident Evil 4 was basically just one big escort mission. Snake Eater had a section, which was kind of like I don't know, it takes away from the gameplay, but adds to the story. You know what I mean? But the Earth Temple, out of the two main ones, was my favorite. You got the mirror shield, you got the light puzzling, you're controlling a character, there's a 3D aspects of it. The final room, I think, that leads into the boss, there's like 50 different mirrors, and like you're basically reflecting the light like 14 different times, and you can utilize the character too, so she can hold up her harp and she can reflect light too. So it's like you're dealing with like two mirror shields essentially on top of like the big mirrors that you're moving, moving these statues around, facing them to shoot the light in a certain direction to unlock it. I thought that was really nice. That was like a really large puzzle, and like you slowly kind of build up to that, and they throw everything at you. They're like, okay, now solve this one. Boss fight, once again, really enjoyable. A giant ghost thing that is attacking you. Use the light to hit him, and it stuns him, and he breaks into a bunch of little ghosts. And then once you gotta knock all those little ghosts out. Oh wait, no, you stun him, then you pick him up because you also need the power bracelet. Man, another throwback. The power bracelet once again, like Ocarina of Time, but at the end. But yeah, you pick him up, you throw him into spikes. He breaks into a bunch of little guys. You kill those all. At this point too, you could have a super spin attack, which I loved it, but once again, it was another one of those like things where it's like, oh, this is cartoony. But if you get 10 night crests from defeating those giant iron knuckles, you can bring them back to your starting island, and the guy shows you. It takes magic power, but you charge up your sword and you spin like and you spin for like 10 seconds straight, like attacking enemies. That was helpful. I used that a couple times to kill a lot of the small ghosts early on. But then, if you finish the attack without hitting anything that interrupts it, Link stops, and it makes like a circling bird thing from like the old Looney Tunes cartoons where they go around you and it's like woo, woo, and like your eyes are like spinning. So it's like, oh, they had to throw that in there, right? But that allows you to power up the Master Sword. And then the second time you go to the Wind Temple, funny enough, which is not the Rito, which is actually your little forest dwelling friend there. And you utilize him. Now, the things that he can do is he can fly, which he's actually kind of fun to control. He can fly too. But he also plants seeds, which immediately go into a tree, which you can utilize the hook shot, which I think this is the hook shot area. But you utilize the hook shot on those trees to kind of go around. Now, I like this temple less, but from like a larger 3D puzzle solving environment, it reminded me of Majora's Mask, the Snow Temple, which, funny enough, people are looking. I read a thing the other day. It was like top 10 temples, and this was one of them. It was like fan favorites. I was like, the Snowhead Temple from Majora's Mask. I was like, man, I love it and I hate it at the same time. But the reason I mention that is like you have this like you're in almost like a cone or a cylinder that goes up multiple floors, and then you have like a central area that connects to the entire temple to every room, and that's how this temple is. You got a giant fan in the center as well. It also, I feel like, it's a little bit more creative and loose, where the Earth Temple was structured, and it's like you kind of know which rooms you're going into. This is kind of different. I feel like you can do it a little bit out of order. This temple, a little more annoying, not as seamless, but maybe a bit more creative with the puzzle solving mechanics, I think. You get to the end here and you fight a giant. Oh my gosh, is it a sand boss in this room? You see, it feels like the earth and wind temples were kind of like mixed here. But anyway, he comes out of the ground. Giant sandworm, looks exactly like the fire boss from Ocarina of Time. He floats around up there. You can hit him. Dives into the sand. Creates a sand pit. You got to be very careful not to fall in, or he gets you. But if you use the hook shot, you can pull his tongue out or eye out, whatever it is, and you hit it. Follow that a few times to kill it. There's also other sandworms he can summon, which is really was frustrating as you're being sucked into a sand vortex. But at this point, you got the Master Sword powered up. So, simple. You first have the Master Sword. The little side pieces are kind of in. So the first thing, it unlocks it. The second thing gives it its glow back. So you can tell that it's like powered up. It looks awesome. Like it's bright. It's glowing. It looks huge. It was really nice kind of powering up the Master Sword. It actually like felt good, to have the completed Master Sword. Now, up until this point, I have been sailing around. I have, at this point, I don't know if you needed them yet. I got the fire arrows. I got the ice arrows. Those are in the game. The light arrows are in the game as well. Got the power bracelet. At this point, I've completed about 75% of the map, I think, just by sailing around. At this point, too, the sailing mechanic never really bothered me because pretty early on, as soon as I got the bow, you can actually, if you get sucked up in a typhoon, you can see a little frog guy in the center of it. And once you're given the Wind Waker and you learn how to control the wind, a frog god comes out and he's like, "Yo, my brother's angry." He's like, "Oh, okay." You shoot him a bunch of times and he's like, "Hey, my bad. I'm gonna stop doing this. Here, I'm gonna teach you a song that teaches you how to teleport." So at this point, you can teleport around like 6 or 7 zones on the map. You're never really selling more than 2 to 3 tiles at most. Now, there are online guides. I have played the game already. At some point, I had a strategy guide, I'm sure. I had Nintendo Power. At this point, the only way in game that you would know where to go or like where to find certain things would be those fish that you feed that give you tips. They kind of tell you, and there's a few of them where if there's like nothing really special, they'll be like, "Hey, you got to do this," basically. So they kind of tell you about the upgrades. Now, the next part is where the upgrades kind of come into play. So, I upgraded my bombs. I think I had 60 bombs. I upgraded the arrows all the way, 99 or whatever. They have the biggest quiver. This game centers around a mechanic, and what is believed is that they created the Triforce of Courage section of the game to elongate the game because they had to cut several dungeons out. Now, if they cut several dungeons out, and originally the game was supposed to be designed where you either swim into the ocean or you have that guy that lowers you down into Hyrule proper, and Hyrule was supposed to be explored in different sections. Like, basically, I don't want to say the game's cut in half, but the game became something different. So, you have the Master Sword powered up, and now you need to gather the Triforce of Courage piece. We know, just from being Zelda fans, that Ganon's going to have power. Zelda has wisdom, and the links of history always have courage, but it's broken into 8 pieces. So this is where I can kind of understand it's broken up. This could have been what I think would have been perfect here if you're trying to keep the game as close to its current iteration as you can, but change something that realistically could have happened during the development cycle that I don't think would have extended it. If you recall, at the end of Ocarina of Time, you have like a bonus little temple kind of thing that's broken up, and I think it's 5 or 6. It's after the main dungeon, so you have like a forest temple little section in Ganon's Tower. I would have liked something similar to like the Tower of the Gods or Ganon's Tower, where you actually go somewhere and maybe it teleports you back down to Hyrule and you go into Ganon's Tower, or you go into some type of like mini sectioned off temple comprised of like maybe like, so say 8, say we stick with 8 Triforce pieces, like maybe you find them throughout the temple and you use all of your powers and tools and items and weapons up until this point to solve maybe like 5 to 8 sections that equal like the size of one temple, kind of like Ganon's Tower or something like that. I think that would have been better, but at that point, the selling mechanic would have seemed kind of like silly, because the map then would have been way too big to justify how much empty ocean there is, essentially. I think 2 things should have happened. They should have cut the size of everything down in half. So the map, because there's just so much unused space, and I think you could do this with, a lot of these side islands. It just didn't really need to be separated. But also make like a Ganon's Tower type thing, where that's where you collect the 8 Triforce pieces to assemble the Triforce of Courage. That, I believe, is the idea that makes the most sense to me, that would have met their development crunch, but also not changed too much about the game. Because honestly, if you think about it, if you could swim through the entire ocean, or each tile you could have dropped down to Hyrule, and like Hyrule would have been like another entire half of the game with 2 additional temples. That just realistically I don't think could have happened with the Wind Waker. So what did happen? And this is where a lot of the controversy comes into play, where people don't like Wind Waker. Now, for me, once again, I kind of went in knowing what to expect. So I don't think it was detrimental to the experience, but I do understand the argument that is, hey, this part of the game kind of stinks. So let me explain. What you have to do is find 8 Triforce map pieces that show you where 8 shards are on the map, all separate locations. And once you have that, you know where to go find a piece of the Triforce. When you get these maps, remember you need 8 of them. You have to take them to Tingle on Tingle's Island, which, by looking back, man, Tingle's a creepy character. He's a 35, he's 35, and well, in Majora's Mask, he's a 35-year-old guy who plays dress up and acts like a fairy in the forest because he doesn't want to get old, and his dad's like, you got to get out of here, you're a bum. In this one, he's a criminal who stole a picked-up box because he really wanted it. But yeah, there's a Tingle tuner where you can use the Game Boy Advance. Now, I didn't do this, but I wonder if this had something like maybe they made the game easier or something. But anyway, you got to go to Tingle Island. You take one of these treasure maps, and you got to give Tingle like 300 rupees each time. 8 times 3, maybe even more. I think they get more expensive as time goes on. I think to decipher all of the maps, you need over 3,000 rupees. Guess what? You can only carry 200 with your starting wallet. So you need to get another wallet, which gives you 500, then another one, which gives you 2,000. Now, if you didn't know this was coming up and you were like, I don't care if I have rupees because they didn't really serve a purpose, like a big purpose up until this point, you might be thinking, oh my god, I've wasted so many rupees because I didn't have the wallet space to hold them. And now, like, I need like 300 per map. So now you got to go farm rupees. Now, Nintendo also had something planned for this. So once again, I knew about this. So like by the time I, really early in the game, like as early as I could, I had the 5,000 rupee wallet. I didn't mess around. I was like, where are those? We got to get those. I'm getting those. Like that has to happen because I know what's coming. So I'm going to save all my rupees. I only had to farm for one of the map pieces. So you got to find the 8 map pieces. You got to take them to Tingle. You got to get the maps deciphered by paying for each one of them. And he gives you a little X on the map saying this is where the Triforce piece is. If you don't do that, you can't find these things. So you need to find the maps, decipher them, then go find the Triforce pieces. So it's, what? It's 24 separate steps. Finding the 8 maps, deciphering the 8 maps, finding the 8 Triforce pieces. One of the Triforce pieces is on a ghost ship. This is kind of just a cool thing like that I like that it's stuck in the game. Like they're telling you like, oh, one of the islands is like come back when the moon is full. So there's like some mystery there. But there's this ghost ship that will just sail around and it's creepy, scary, and there's this fog surrounding it. If you don't have the ghost ship map, you can't get on the ghost ship to solve the puzzle there and get the Triforce piece. So explaining it, you can kind of see it's convoluted and you're really stretching it out. It honestly, if we were keeping the game exactly as is without adding anything, probably it would have made more sense to just combine all of that into one thing. So instead of 24 separate tasks, finding the maps, paying Tingle to decipher the maps, sailing on the ocean to locate the 8 pieces of the Triforce separately, what if instead of 24 actions, that was 8 actions basically? So, I don't know, like, that whole map part, it is really tough. Like, explaining it does not sound great. I didn't mind it because I was already ready. I had to farm rupees one time, and like I mentioned earlier, Nintendo designed it's like 50 floors or something like that of enemies that you fight, and you got to go fight them all throughout, and there's like breaks in between. But you get a ton of rupees after you clear like 10 floors. So I can't remember how many floors it is. It's a bunch. It's actually really fun. It's on the main island. You basically, not hook shot, you like swing over, lift a giant rock, and there's a hole, and you go down. So there's a way of grinding out rupees, but once again, I could kind of understand if you only had a 200 rupee wallet going into the section, you'd be like, what in the heck is happening? But you basically sell around to these islands, you get the 8 Triforce pieces. Okay. This section of the game did not bother me that much because I knew it was coming, and I've already explored around a lot during this point, and it went pretty quick. It was a few hours, I think, to do basically everything. But getting all of the Triforce pieces, now you got to actually go and confront Ganon. I'm trying to think of where he's at here. You go... I can't remember if it's in the Tower of the Gods. But anyway, you basically go to rescue, Tetra, who is Princess Zelda, who Ganondorf wants. Because Ganondorf is trying to assemble the Triforce to bring Hyrule back, basically. I mean, he wants to rule over it. He's still a jerk. But all of his sections, I really liked this Ganondorf because in the previous versions, he's just an evil trickster who is foretold to basically, destroy Hyrule and take it over and create it in his own image. And for whatever reason, I don't know if the goddesses can like pick who gets the Triforce of power, but he keeps getting it, and he is, he's powerful, so it makes him more powerful. He's able to conquer everything. And I think eventually the goddesses were just like, yo, this guy won't stop, and we've done everything, so Hyrule's a lost cause. You go and you fight 3 different variants of a puppet Ganon, so the giant pig monsters. So this is as close you get to fighting like the Ganon monster. You got to use the light arrows here, I believe, and he's controlling him with like a puppet essentially. So he has like string coming up, or I guess it's ropes. But you shoot he has this giant ball which I think is controlling him. You shoot it with some light arrows. He turns into a spider. Different, it's a really cool boss fight. It's like a 3-fold boss fight, but you do that, and he's like, all right, let's go. You climb all the way up, and Zelda is asleep in a bed, and he's standing over her. He's giving you your evil guy speech. I think a part of the game that does not get enough credit is the storytelling of the ending and how it ends. And this is going to be spoiler alerts because I am kind of just going to dive into it. But Ganondorf finally confronts you because you have what he needs. He beats the crap out of Link too. It's funny but not funny. Like he just rushes right up to Link and starts punching him in the face, beating him. He's not going to kill them. This Ganondorf wants to reach his goals, but he doesn't seem to be entirely evil. That's the weird thing. He wants to rule over Hyrule for some reason, which that's evil. But he also wants to bring Hyrule back. Keep in mind, up until this point, the goddesses have been like, this land is cursed. Like, this is what you have done with the Triforce and everything that we've given you as a whole. Like, obviously, like, Ganondorf taking over. It's not everyone else's fault. But it's like, this is what keeps happening. So they just kind of flooded it. They basically said, Hyrule is a lost cause. We're sealing it underground. We're sealing it in time. And we're just raining it out. And everybody that dies, and whoever lives, like, we're rebuilding it, right? It's kind of interesting, because, like, at that point, in this moment of the game, Ganondorf gives you a big speech, and he's saying, like, I came from the desert, in the desert there's no wind, and he's like, I just always felt like, he's like, I miss Hyrule. I wanted that wind to, like, blow on me, basically. He's like, I was envious of it. And he wants to bring Hyrule back. He wants to get rid of these oceans. He wants Hyrule back, but he wants to rule over it. Keep in mind, that is nobody else's objective of this. Like, it reminds me almost of like Dark Souls, where rekindling the fire is like the goal. but it's also causing an immense amount of pain and suffering in the world. It's like having the opposite effect of like, saving the day. It's like you're kind of decaying the world, and the goddesses are done with it. So I just find this whole part very interesting. So you're fighting Ganondorf. Well, let me rephrase that. Ganondorf takes the three Triforce pieces and summons the Triforce, and he's like, whoever touches it gets a wish, and he's gonna touch it and basically bring back Hyrule, right? Very interesting. It almost seems like, I don't want to say Ganondorf is a good guy, but it's like he wants to resurrect Hyrule. I know he wants to rule over it, and that kind of sucks. But it's like the way that he speaks about it, he like misses it, and you're like, oh, this is weird, right? Like we have to kind of confront him. Um, well, he beats the crap out of you. Obviously, he's stronger than Zelda. He summons the Triforce. The Triforce is huge. It's like bigger than a person, and he's about to make his wish. And the King of Hyrule appears behind you and puts his hand on it first, and basically wishes to like move past all of this to give, to give Link and Zelda. He's like, give these children and these people a future. Now, the King of Hyrule is atoning for the sins of the past, and what he's saying here is like, Link, Zelda, all of the people that are in this world. Like, the king is trapped down. He's communicating through you, through the king of the Red Lions, the boat, right? But he's stuck in Hyrule. He's frozen there. And he's like, we must atone for the sins of the past. And Hyrule, it's sinful. And he makes that wish. And guess what? Hyrule starts flooding. So once again, the goddesses have essentially punished Hyrule. Like, they're like, it's done. We're done with this. We're drowning everyone. The Great Flood, the biblical Great Flood. And the King of Hyrule wishes for a future for Link, Zelda, and the others. And the way that the Triforce responds to this is it floods everything. It's like Hyrule is permanently being flooded. This is it. It's so crazy, like how topsy-turvy this story feels, because in the past it's like we're gonna defeat Ganon and save Hyrule. There's like a saving feeling. It doesn't feel like you're definitely are a hero, and I understand why this is all happening. But it's like you're leaving the past fully behind to pay forward to the future, and Hyrule is gone. The king, gone. Ganondorf, Master Sword, everything that has made this cycle of Hyrule is gone. As the water is flooding down, Ganondorf, this is so awesome, just starts like laughing. And he's like, there's no future for you. Because at this point, his whole plan of bringing Hyrule back is forever foiled, right? Unless they make a future game where we go back down there. And he's like, all right. He pulls out two giant swords. He's like, you guys are done. So this is where, with the help of Zelda, you fight Ganon, and he's actually pretty tough. Like, you can distract him, and eventually she keeps shooting him with a light arrow, which stuns him. So he goes over, puts a sword away. He could have just chopped her head off here. Like, once again, like this, he's fighting you guys, but like he could have just like chopped her up, but he didn't. He hits her, knocks her out. After that, you got to distract him for a little while, and then eventually she's like, okay, we gotta figure this out. You got to keep him busy. And she's like, I'm going to shoot you with a light arrow. You use your mirror shield to reflect it back into him, and boom. Now, after you do enough damage to him, this is one of the greatest scenes in all of Zelda. So once again, spoilers for this is the end. This is the wrap up. And this gets my juices flowing. Like, I get so excited about this. You have to use that A mechanic where you do that like little dodge roll and like you do that attack. So after you've done enough damage to him, you do this. And this is how the game ends. This is how you defeat Ganondorf. And once again, where you're like, oh man, there was definitely like these themes of the ending and of the story of Hyrule and like the sinful, like we're leaving it behind. This is all like really adult like high level stuff. Like it's not like I would. I don't think my my children will be able to like understand the impact of this and how like this is much different from other Zeldas. But Link does that dodge, jumps up and drives the Master Sword through Ganon's forehead, just sinks it down. Full blade goes through his forehead. And the last thing he says is, "The wind is blowing." And he turns into a giant stone statue with the Master Sword sealed into Ganon to lock him away. And as this is happening, the King of Hyrule can't come with you. He too is part of the past. He has to atone, and he's got to stay down there as the ocean just caves in and floods everything. But luckily, Link and Zelda are, protected by the wish of the Triforce, and they're pushed up to the surface. What an ending! Now, please, oh my god, can we make even like a bonus DLC level of something where to retrieve the Master Sword, Wind Waker 2, where you go back down and you pull the Master Sword out of his head, like it's required for the story, but then you unleash Ganon again. Like, now I haven't beat Tears of Kingdom, so I pray to God that doesn't happen in Tears of Kingdom. I'm gonna feel like a big dummy, but the ending was just phenomenal. Like you stab Ganon in the forehead with the Master Sword, and that's everything from the past Zelda is just washed away and buried. But this allows for a true future for everyone that survived this gigantic flood, for Link and Zelda, and like it's hope. It's not like a perfect situation, but it is hopeful. And ultimately, what has transpired in terms of the story, you have hope in the fact that now the future is not tied to the past, and whatever that the generations going forward decide to do with the world that is left, that is what they get to build. They get to build this new future, this new world. Hyrule, the Master Sword, the King of Hyrule. I don't know about the Triforce. I think that probably split apart or went back into heaven or whatever, wherever the Triforce goes when it's not in use. But all of that is washed away and trapped forever. And it's like you have to atone for your sins and like know where you came from, but it's gone. Like that's done. That's all washed away. That really gives the kind of the ocean, metaphor. It's pretty interesting. It's like you're washing away your sin and everything. But yeah, the game ends with Link's grandmother and sister are safe, and he's on the boat, and he's sailing away next to the pirate ship using his boat, and it's like, where does he go? It's like the future is just this vast open ocean, and you can do anything, and like you get to build this world into what the future generations can appreciate. So there is hope, and Ganondorf kind of represent like he's the sin of the past, and it's just such an interesting ending. Like you leave the Master Sword down there in his head. Like talk about like killing Ganondorf. Like you stuck a sword through his head, literally a sword that seals him away, and it's like in his head, and you leave him down there. So the ending in the story, I just absolutely love the lore of this game. I thought it was great. So kind of high level, what are my takeaways in my retrospective with Wind Waker playing it in 2025? It's still a phenomenal game. It's a Zelda game I think everyone should play. I think personally for me, it's kind of the last of the classical 3D Zeldas that kind of mirror like the gameplay of the 2D Zeldas. Everything after like Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword, I think exist as their own. A lot of people kind of say, oh, those are the classic 3Ds as well, but they are different. It would be nice to replay Twilight Princess in particular and kind of give a good retrospective on that, because that was supposed to be Ocarina of Time 2, essentially. But, does it ever live up to the Ocarina of Time hype? That hype's just ridiculous. But I loved Wind Waker. I still thought it was really good. I thought the sailing mechanic was fine. I can understand the frustration with the Triforce quest. I understand where the frustration is there. And, ultimately, there are many different ways from the development standpoint that could have made the game better. But once again, I still think it's a phenomenal Zelda game. And the fact that you can have a Nintendo Switch 2 right now and have Nintendo Switch Online and play it is just absolutely awesome. They really were smart there where they could have put some stinkers in the initial lineup of games, but I think they did a really good job of giving you, 3 games at launch and now 4 total games of like different GameCube games that were really cool. And giving everyone a chance to experience the original Wind Waker, I think is phenomenal. I hope people can go back and play it and, look back on, you know, what it was, but understanding that they're looking at it through the eyes of 2025. And Wind Waker is a cult hit, and people look back on it very fondly, where it wasn't looked at like that before. But ultimately, I still think the game holds up. I love the dungeons. I love the classic, Zelda feel. I love the story. I love the final. I like the boss fights. I love the final fight with Ganondorf. It's really a game that is worth playing, and it makes me sad, but it's bittersweet. I'm also happy to see at how ill received Wind Waker was, and now how fondly it's looked back upon, because I think the game deserved it, and I think Nintendo did a great job of bringing a Zelda game to the GameCube. So this wraps up episode 30 of Gaming's Lost Memories. I'm your host, BigReed, and I look forward to you joining me again in the future.